Hey, it's Nancy from Nancy Chu Homes, and today we are going to discuss whether or not you are bearish or bullish on this real estate market. Okay, go ahead, take the pause the video, go down, answer in the comments whether or not you are bearish or bullish, all right? Okay, thanks for coming back. So if you're bearish on this market, it means that you're very worried about one particular thing. And that particular thing is house prices are so high, they have to crash at some point, right? That's what we're seeing a lot of. And if you look at all the, like YouTube videos, articles that you see in mainstream media, there's a lot of, they've gone up so high in such a short time, they obviously have to come down in some sort of dramatic fashion, right? Well, I thought about that and I wanted to show you some graphs that I pulled. So this first graph is actually, I know, graphs, so boring, but listen, it's really interesting in this case. So this graph starts at the year 1900 and goes to the year 2020. And it shows you the house prices and how they've grown, right? Well, so these little red vertical lines actually match up to one of the 15 recessions that occurred between 1900 and 2020. So what I did was I placed them in there to match the time and where they intersect with house prices. So the one thing that I hear a lot from these bearish folks is that, house prices, they have to crash. I mean, look at 2008. 2008 is coming and you'll see these like worse than 2008. We're headed on the same path. Okay, well, guess what? You and I both know that 2008 was a credit recession. That is not what we have right now. We do not have people underwater with terrible loans, right? Right now, we're sort of suffering from like a demographic and inventory recession, which is very, very different. And we don't have so many people in housing distress. So I'm going to tell you right now that this graph demonstrates to you that out of the last 15 recessions that we've had, only one of them did house prices go down. And that would be the one in 2008, which we've already established is a very different recession from the one we have right now. So for the folks who are bearish, I'm still trying to figure out how they're making the correlation when statistically speaking, that's not how we would bet. Statistically speaking, we'd bet that there would be not necessarily a drop in house price because 14 out of the last 15 recessions, that was not the case. It's just a number, this is plain old math. It's stats, you guys. So, by the way, if you like our videos, please take a moment to comment, like, and subscribe. We love sharing information with folks, and the more you guys subscribe, it helps us get information out to those who need it about the housing market, okay? Thank you very much. Thanks for listening to my plea. Also, have a look here. This is a chart of all the recessions, right? So I went ahead and pulled this and it tells you some very important pieces of information. The two that are most important being peak unemployment, and also farthest right, next to that would be the amount of GDP decline that we saw during those particular time frames, during that particular recession. GDP being gross domestic product, so how much of our economy did we lose, right? So if you look at the number one, the Great Depression, which of course has, the worst of all. What you're looking at here is almost a full quarter of our economy sort of disappeared, right? We lost almost a full quarter of our economy. And what's so interesting is that when you walk up to, people and you just, people who both work in the industry and also in econ and whatever, and you say, so, how much of our GDP do you think that we lost during the Great Recession? And we must have some sort of recency bias because the average person, which I've asked around, has been saying everything from about 10% to about, 25%, which is the same as in the Great Depression. Well, guess what? It wasn't a depression, it was a recession. So clearly, that number is not going to surpass that. So here's the surprise. I'm going to roll it down for you. Oh, yeah. So we had a little over 5% of loss of economy during the recession of 2008. Like I said before, recency bias. Our memory is that it was horrific. But was it? I mean, yes, it was. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I lived through it. I worked through it. It was really horrible. But compared to historical instances of these other times, it's really kind of a drop in the bucket in the long run. Now, the recovery was very slow and very long and very tedious, and took us like 10 years to rebuild it back. So I get that. I understand. And I will tell you, the other thing that I find super interesting about this is if you look underneath, that is the COVID recession, which of course was really only about 2 months worth of recession. And after that, we kind of picked ourselves right up and kept going. But the thing that's so interesting about it is, look, we only had at its peak 10% unemployment in this country during the 2008 recession. And the interesting thing is, look at COVID. COVID, we were almost at 15% unemployment. And it did take a little bit for that to come back as well. So I'm just saying, many of the factors that people are pointing to who are bearish and saying, yep, here it comes, the great crash of home prices, they're not really adding up. And these charts will show you that, right? So pocket this information, take it for later. Now, for those of you that are more bullish on the market, people who are optimistic maybe optimistic is not the right word, but people who feel that home prices are sort of here to stay. The biggest challenge with that is that it means that you and I have to admit to ourselves that if we are being bullish, we believe that this is kind of the new normal for pricing. And unfortunately, I will tell you that this isn't really the most affordable market, right? For the vast majority of folks, I'm going to tell you, I think about 50% of people in my market area alone can no longer afford to either buy a new house for the first time, or even to buy the house that they're currently living that they bought, before. So I would tell you that affordability is definitely like, rah. And part of being bullish on the market means you have to accept that the new normal is that half the folks can't really afford to buy a house. At least not in the place that they think they're going to buy one. Now, how do you then, learn to live with this, or how do you sort of work around it? Well, I'll be the first to tell you that don't buy anything at the median. Buy below the median. Learn to live with a home that has a condition that may not be what you expected, a size that you may not have expected, or how about you just change locations? Let's just go someplace where the housing is cheaper, right? Or maybe the taxes aren't as high. How about that? That seems like a good idea. How about some other things like learning to use mortgage products? The 15-year fixed is lower right now than the 30-year fixed. And using things like temporary buy downs could be great tools for helping you to reduce that mortgage cost and that monthly payment. And last but not least, and most importantly, that I want you guys to understand, the Federal Reserve has promised us that they're not going to touch the rates until, I don't know, maybe like March at this point. And there's no guarantee that they're not going to raise rates in March, but they've been pretty clear. They're telegraphing that we've got December, January, February. All right. And you can also see that for the last 8 weeks in a row, the banks have been kind of like ticking down the interest rates on, on mortgages. So I feel like December, January, February, there could be some real opportunity here. First of all, seasonally, it tends to be a quiet time, which means you'll have less competition if you are a buyer, right? So you're not fighting in the multiple offers, getting into all that nonsense. And at the same time, we might be looking at some of the lowest interest rates that we've had in a little bit if the banks keep sort of ticking it down, which means that right now, the next 3 months could be the best opportunity that any buyer has to go and get that house. Because I'm telling you, the moment the interest rates drop below 7, we're going to see the buyers come out because there is definitely pent up demand. They want to be out, they're ready, and they were going to buy last year, and the fact that they couldn't. So they're going to figure it out and they're going to come out. So it's a perfect congruence of it's a great situation. Less competition. Granted, the rates are going to be a little bit higher than you want them to be, but they're certainly going to be better than they have been. And I think we all know that a refi opportunity is going to happen over the next 2 years. So January, February, and then even this December, I'm telling you now, come and get your house while everyone else is stuffing their face full of turkey. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. And by the way, once again, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you ever need me, you can always find me at nancychuhomes.com. Have a great holiday season. And I'll see you guys next week.